In this video, I'm going to give my explanation on Ozzy Flowell's Portal Iceberg. Quick shout out to Mauricio Hara for creating the original Iceberg video. There will be spoilers for Portal and Portal 2. With everything out of the way, let's begin. The cake is real. GLaDOS' cake has been argued to be real instead of being a lie, as the Ratman sketches insinuate. Those who argue that the cake is real point out to the cutscene where it shows the Black Forest cake in the basement of the facility before a robotic arm snuffs out the candle. However, people have debated on whether that was Chell's POV or was just another disembodied camera. So, a cake does exist, and GLaDOS could have baked that cake. However, is it still a lie if Chell never received that cake? GLaDOS did tell Chell that she would get a cake after all the tests were over. Who knows? Lab Rat comic. Portal 2 Lab Rat is a comic released on April 2011, taking place between Portal and Portal 2. The comic follows Doug Ratman, a lab worker at Aperture Science with a history of schizophrenia, who survives GLaDOS' neurotoxin attacking the facility when she is first turned on. Sneaking through the facility, he watches Chell being tested by GLaDOS in the hidden areas where his markings can be found. After several flashbacks of Ratman's employment at Aperture Science, he watches Chell battling against GLaDOS in Portal's ending. He continues into the facility to rescue Chell after she is abducted by the party escort bot. When he finds Chell, he tries to release her from her solitary confinement, but notices that the power systems are failing. To prevent her death, he patches her chamber into a reserve grid, which saves her life but leaves her trapped for an unknown period of time. The comic ends with Ratman crawling to a cryo unit and putting himself to sleep. The companion cube has dead bodies. This is probably one of the more popular Portal theories, thanks to MatPat from Game Theory. As the theory goes, companion cubes have dead test subjects inside, and MatPat provides a list of evidence that supports his claim. Firstly, the achievement you get when you put the companion cube into an incinerator is called fratricide, meaning the killing of one's brother or sister. Secondly, the way GLaDOS talks about the cube seems to imply that the cube used to be sentient, as she warns about not listening to the cube if it talks, or that it only wants to be put in an incinerator.
The Enrichment Center reminds you that the weighted companion cube cannot speak. In the event that the weighted companion cube does speak, the Enrichment Center urges you to disregard its advice.
Thirdly, Doug Ratman is accompanied by a companion cube in Portal 2 Lab Rat. Ratman talks to the cube, which helps him navigate any dangers in the facility and scolds him from taking his medication. Although, the cube could just be a manifestation of his schizophrenia rather than an actual person speaking to him. Finally, the cube has to be incinerated because the emancipation grid could reveal the corpse, as it is organic material while the container isn't. MatPat's theory is quite popular and seems compelling, but it's important to remember that it's
just a theory, again.
Aperture Tag. Aperture Tag, the paint gun testing initiative, is a 2014 mod that became a standalone game, developed by the Aperture Tag team. Instead of a portal gun, the game focuses on a paint gun that shoots the blue and orange gels found in Portal 2. A personality core, Nigel, assists the player throughout the game as they solve test chambers. The game also used the pneumatic diversity vents to transition the player from one test chamber to another, which was shown in the early builds of Portal 2. Portal Stories Mel. Portal Stories Mel is a Portal 2 mod that has Mel, an Olympian from 1952, going to relaxation for a short period of time. She awakens decades later and uses a prototype portal gun to escape the facility. She then meets the personality core of Virgil and learns that the destruction of GLaDOS brought the Aperture Science facility into ruins. They must escape the facility before the Aperture employee guardian and intrusion system eliminates them. Mel would then shut down Aegis and escape into the surface. Meanwhile, Aegis wakes up GLaDOS, starting the events of Portal 2. Quick fun fact, after the game was released, the test chambers were so difficult, the devs had to create a story mode which toned down the difficulty. The original chambers were now put into the new advanced mode. Still Alive is canon. Portal Still Alive is an exclusive expansion pack for the Xbox 360 version of Portal. The new levels were based on Portal, the Flash version map pack created by We Create Stuff. According to Valve marketing director Doug Lombardi, the levels are non-canon. I haven't found much discussion about whether or not this expansion pack is canon. However, this GameFAQs threads discuss the story elements in the original Flash version map pack. such as the lab with Chell clones and the Combine dropship at the end of the mod. They wrote about whether Still Alive, just announced at the time, would incorporate the Flash version's story elements, while discussing how these elements could be incorporated into Portal's established storyline. Needless to say, none of the Flash version's story elements were put into Portal. The Portal and Portal 2 betas. I'm going to first summarize Portal's beta. If you want a more in-depth explanation, check out Tally McVicker's The History of Portal. Portal is the spiritual successor to the game Narbacular Drop, a freeware game developed by students in the DigiPen Institute of Technology. The game depicted a princess who used portals to escape a dungeon and defeat a demon. Valve discovered this game and decided to hire the team, where they began their work on Portal. At first, the development team focused on level design and gameplay before delving into the aesthetics and story. The portals were mostly static images of either a number or a picture of Christopher Reeve's Superman. Most, if not all of the textures, props, and effects were borrowed from Half-Life 2, giving the game a distinct Nova Prospect look. After the devs got the portal mechanic reliable, they got to work on the test chambers, which were one of the first things that were finished. All of the beta level designs resemble the final game's test chambers. After the test chambers were finished, the rest of the development was spent on the art style and the storyline. The Nova Prospect look changed into its clinical look because players would confuse some decorations as puzzle elements. Even then, there would be many changes to this art style, such as different doors and wires. At this point, there was no storyline and there was no GLaDOS, and it's unknown what existed before her. However, it is known that the final sequence would have the player escaping the facility, exploring the back rooms of the facility, and restarting a power generator to escape. This final sequence was kept throughout most of the development, but it was changed into a boss fight once GLaDOS was created. Initially, the boss fight would have the player redirecting energy pellets to GLaDOS before the pellets became lasers. However, both were dropped due to gameplay inconsistencies. The devs decided to have the fight in a turret room with a rocket turret, specifically the turret room that is in the final game. Soon, the final boss fight where the player uses rockets to take out personality cores while neurotoxin fills the room was created. Now as for Portal 2's beta, it's important to acknowledge that Portal 2 began as f-stop, and an f-stop will be discussed later in the video. Besides f-stop, there were some changes in the development of Portal 2. At first, Chell was supposed to be replaced with Mel, another test subject. However, playtesters were disappointed at the fact that GLaDOS didn't recognize him as the person who killed her, so Mel was removed and Chell returned. The cut character was an inspiration for the mod Portal Stories Mel. F-Stop. F-Stop is a project that was originally going to be Portal 2. It was a prequel set in the 1950s. Chell and GLaDOS are notably absent as a new test subject and Cave Johnson would replace them respectively. The plot consists of Johnson wanting immortality, so he uploaded himself into artificial intelligence and started to realize how much of his humanity was lost. The rest of the story involved Johnson taking control of a robot army and even charging the player with war crimes against the turrets. The only connection that exists between Portal and this version of Portal 2 would be the setting, Aperture Science. Although playtesters liked f-stop's mechanics, they were disappointed that GLaDOS and portals were not in the game. As Gabe Newell stated on the final hours of Portal 2, "We are making Portal 2 without portals," before slamming his head on his desk. The details of the f-stop game mechanic have been kept a secret, as Valve may want to use them in a future title. In the video, The Unused Content of Portal 2, Tally McVicker speculated,
What I think f-stop was a game about changing light and angle of cameras, as f-stop is a camera term and aperture is also a camera term. Also within some of the f-stop concept art, you see the same scene drawn twice, but one version of the drawing is lighter than the other.
At GDC 2012, Eric Wolpaw and Chef Falasak teased f-stop with video demos while discussing Portal 2's development.
This is where you're waking up in that version of the relaxation ball, if it plays. There we go.
Still, Valve kept a tight lip on what exactly this mechanic was, until... On December 22nd, 2019, Lunchhouse Software revealed Exposure, a video that demonstrates Valve's f-stop for the first time while using its original source code. Basically, the mechanics where you take a photo of an object with a camera, which then allows you to place the object anywhere and change its size. It would make for some interesting gameplay, but the studio postponed development as of September 2020 because they wanted to focus on their other projects. People have noted that this mechanic is similar to the game Superliminal, which focuses on optical illusions and forced perspective, along with manipulating objects to move them around and change their size. As of now, this exposure video serves as a sort of archive of Valve's original f-stop. Greek mythology. Many people in the community speculate that Greek mythology allusions are found in the Portal games. This chart I found on Reddit compares Portal characters to Greek mythology figures, and I'm going to talk about some of its key points. GLaDOS is compared to Prometheus, a titan god of fire. This had been alluded to by the Oracle turret in Portal 2.
Prometheus was punished by the gods for giving the gift of knowledge to man. He was cast into the bowels of the earth and pecked by birds.
This quote is sort of correct. Instead of knowledge, Prometheus gave fire to humanity after stealing it from Zeus. As punishment, Zeus chained Prometheus to a mountain where an eagle eats his liver every day. Being immortal, his liver would regenerate back, only to have the eagle eat it again the next day. GLaDOS is similar to Prometheus as she gives Chell the portal gun, a symbol of Prometheus's fire, and is punished by becoming a potato which has a bird pecking on her. Some say that Prometheus was cast down to Tartarus as a part of his punishment, and GLaDOS fell into Test Shaft 9, which is also labeled as Tartarus 9. Even though they parallel each other, Prometheus was more sympathetic to humanity, while GLaDOS is cruel and cold to her test subjects. The Titan also didn't rule a realm and respected the gods, while GLaDOS killed mostly everyone at Aperture and took over their facility. Wheatley parallels Epimetheus, the Titan of hindsight, who receives Pandora, which represents Chell, from the gods as a gift. Pandora would go on to open her infamous box out of curiosity, causing the traits of suffering, disease, greed, and jealousy to ingrain themselves into humanity. Hope was the only trait left in the box by the time she closed it. Even though Epimetheus and Pandora had a happy relationship, in hindsight, she was the indirect punishment to the Titans for helping humanity. Epimetheus even ignored his brother Prometheus, who warned him about accepting gifts from the gods. Wheatley can be compared to Epimetheus. He partnered up with Chell to overthrow GLaDOS. Despite GLaDOS' warning, Wheatley goes through a core transfer to take control of the whole facility. Corrupt with power, he then cast GLaDOS and Chell into the old underground facilities. They would climb out and defeat Wheatley, returning GLaDOS in control and casting Wheatley out into space. In hindsight, he regrets attempting to kill Chell and wishes he could apologize to her. Again, the two are not completely similar. Epimetheus never became a power of evil, he was just a part of the events, while Wheatley was actively participating in them. The wheat fields at the end of Portal 2 could represent Elysium, an underworld realm where its admission was reserved for mortals chosen by the gods, the righteous, and the heroic, where they would live a blessed and happy afterlife. Chell's action may have been heroic as she saves the enrichment facility from being destroyed by Wheatley, being granted access by GLaDOS, who could be seen as the higher god that allows her to go. Because of this, it could be that Chell is dead, possibly from suffocation when she got sucked into the moon. Portal and Greek mythology can be a deep rabbit hole, and this game is filled with plenty more parallels that I haven't covered. Ratman in the Turret Choir. This is a popular misconception. In the ending of Portal 2, a figure can be seen sneaking by in the back of the turret choir. At first glance, many people thought it was Doug Ratman sneaking through the choir. However, this mysterious figure is just a Franken-turret walking through, not Doug Ratman. GLaDOS is Carolyn and Cave Johnson. It's well known that GLaDOS' AI is composed of Carolyn's consciousness, but this entry claims that Cave Johnson is lingering there somewhere. He did mention that he wanted to have his consciousness transformed to an AI, if the technology can be developed before he dies. However, he knows he may not make it, so he decided to make Carolyn take his place, even if she didn't want to. Other than that, there isn't much I could find about this topic, so let me know in the comments if you got some other details. Aperture, Ohio. It is known that the Enrichment Center is likely in Michigan, due to a newspaper highlighting Cave Johnson's purchase of a Michigan salt mine. However, Aperture Science seemed to have another base of operations located in Cleveland, Ohio. The location is found on the blueprints for the Borealis, which was shown in Half-Life 2 Episode 2, after White Force decoded Judith Mossman's transmission. The location is listed on the blueprint on the bottom right, and it's probably where the ship was originally built. Aperture HEV and Gravity Gun. On the 14th page of Portal 2 Lab Rat, an HEV charger and a gravity gun can be found in Ratman's flashback, where a co-worker explains how personality cores functioned. It's quite possible that Aperture Science could have invented them, and that Black Mesa could have stolen the concept, something that Cave Johnson has mentioned before.
And you've most likely used one of the many products we invented, but that other people have somehow managed to steal from us. Black Mesa can eat my bankrupt...
Of course, it could also be Aperture Science stealing Black Mesa tech to reverse engineer it. The E3 beta maps. In 2010, Valve showcased Portal 2 at E3 with a variety of levels that demonstrated new mechanics such as gels and the excursion tunnel. From the presentation, there are 3 levels present in the final game, though modified. The excursion tunnel showcase became Test Chamber 1 from Chapter 8 The Itch. The setting now takes place in a modified test chamber after Wheatley took control rather than the ruined area. Also, the turrets and laser were removed. The aerial faithplate showcase became Test Chamber 6 from Chapter 2 The Cold Boot, which is more like an expanded version from the E3 demo. The thermal discouragement beam showcase became Test Chamber 9 in Chapter 3 The Return, where the turrets were removed and an aerial faithplate panel was added. The map with the gel was not shown in the final game, as the gel was introduced in the underground facilities with Cave Johnson's recordings. The map with the Spike Crusher and the map with the Pneumatic Diversity vent were also cut from the final game. Even though these E3 builds are not available, there are plenty of fan recreations available for download. The 60s era. The 1960s were a rough era for Aperture Science. Their financial boom had passed due to many of its products being stuck in the testing phase, as well as many others being pulled from shelves for violating health and safety regulations. It's clear that Aperture was beginning to struggle. In 1961, Cave Johnson ordered Test Shaft 9 to be sealed off to conceal the unethical testing and experiments Aperture conducted. In 1968, Aperture Science was in legal trouble as the Senate began hearings regarding missing astronauts following their participation in testing. Later in 1968, Aperture declared bankruptcy. The company could no longer pay for high-quality test subjects and resorted to collecting homeless people from the street to participate in testing.
Who wants to make $60? Cash. If you're interested in an additional $60, flag down a test associate and let them know. You could walk out of here with 120 weighing down your bindle if you let us take you apart, put some science stuff in you, then put you back together, good as new.
Johnson was quite bitter about the whole situation. He didn't even attempt to hide his disdain against the homeless people he was forced to hire. Johnson also blamed Black Mesa for stealing their ideas, but he could not come up with any evidence he needed for these accusations, and Black Mesa continued to flourish as Aperture declined. ApertureScience.com login. ApertureScience.com is a website launched in 2006 to promote Portal. Within the website, there will be a command line where the user could input commands to access parts of the website. If the user inputted login, logon, or user, a login screen appears. If the user enters C. Johnson as the username and Tier 3 as the password, the player can interact with what seems to be the settings for GLaDOS. This login and password can be found on Ratman's scribblings in the maintenance area seen during Portal. After logging in, if the command apply is used, the screen will reveal an application process where the user would answer 50 questions to become a test subject. Many of these questions are related to Portal and are humorous. The notes command would reveal a timeline starting from 1953 to 1996. It starts with Aperture's and Cave Johnson's rise from being a shower curtain manufacturer to a prominent science company. Then around the 1970s, Johnson's health began to fail, and Aperture began to sell unethical products before working on the Portal project and initiating a rogue AI. Some of the details in the timeline have been changed in Portal 2. Instead of mercury poisoning, Johnson was killed by moonrock poisoning from making the conversion gel. Also, his dying wish was to have Carolyn become GLaDOS instead of the 3-tiered R&D program. As of December 2010, an update was made to the site, removing the command line. Portal is feminist propaganda. Now, I'm not going to explicitly say that the Portal games are feminist propaganda, but I wanted to use this entry to explore the feminist themes that people have derived from the series. Firstly, Chell can be seen as a feminist icon because of her subversion to expectations. When people first start Portal, they assume they would be a man until they see themselves through the portals and realize they're playing as a woman. Chell being a blank slate was done purposely because other games would explicitly call attention to how the protagonist was a woman. Instead, the player would immerse themselves into Chell's character and would be reminded that they are a woman only when they see themselves through portals. On the other hand, GLaDOS can be seen as a feminist icon because of her unfortunate circumstances surrounding her creation. GLaDOS was a human, Cave Johnson's assistant Carolyn, who was forced to have her consciousness transformed into an AI. So as an act of revenge, she bathed the facility to neurotoxin, killing almost everyone. Some would say that GLaDOS is a product of an abusive relationship. Carolyn was loyal to Cave Johnson, and his mission to do science, so he would blindly follow his word. Because of this relationship, it created a vengeful AI who had little disregard for human life, because it would either kill them all or exploit them as test subjects. With these arguments for feminist themes, there are detractors who believe that these themes are non-intentional. Most of the feminist commentary was not directly addressed by the storyline, while themes of sentient AI, ethical experimentation, and corrupt corporations seem to be the main focus. The idea of Chell being a female to act as a subversion could be seen as a stretch, as most players wouldn't pay attention to the character but rather the portal mechanic. This topic is pretty controversial, and there's still so much that can be discussed. Do you think Portal has feminist themes? Let me know in the comments. Android Hell is real. Android Hell is a place that GLaDOS mentions when the player completes Test Chamber 16 in Portal.
Well done, Android. The Enrichment Center once again reminds you that Android Hell is a real place where you will be sent at the first sign of defiance.
Android Hell could be an area where turrets, who failed to kill their test subjects, would be eliminated. No one seems to truly know what it is, and those who are in defiance could never tell us what it is. Test Chamber A12. In Portal, there is a gap between Test Chamber 16 and 17, which have the file names Test Chamber A11 and Test Chamber A13 respectively. People have mentioned that this Test Chamber A12 could be a cut test chamber that had a cage filled with energy pellets bouncing around. The goal was to get a cube on the button that is inside the cage. The player would have to empty the cage with portals. SPA-302 is missing. SPA-302 was a cut Portal 2 map which consists of a diorama exhibit explaining some of the products and history of Aperture Science. It was a part of the underground section but was removed due to pacing issues. It could be that the Cave Johnson recordings replaced this diorama concept to allow storytelling while the player completed tests. Multiple Ratmans. This entry implies that there are more survivors of GLaDOS' neurotoxin attack. It's possible that some of the other drawings were drawn by other employees. Other than that, there isn't much evidence that there are other humans besides Chell and Doug Ratman. Maybe in a future title, more human characters manifest themselves. The third portal gun rule. When GLaDOS begins listing off the rules of using the portal gun, her third statement is mysteriously cut off.
Do not look directly at the operational end of the device. Do not submerge the device in liquid, even partially. Most importantly, under no circumstances should you...
What this third rule could be is still unknown, and GLaDOS suddenly cutting herself off could just be a taunt towards Chell. Citadel sounds. Some of the ambient sounds for the test chambers are reused assets from Half-Life 2, more specifically the Citadel, that would have ominous humming when no combat is taking place. This could be left over from when the game borrowed assets from Half-Life 2 during development. It does lend to the lonely atmosphere that the test chambers give off. Human body preparation recipe. During the final battle with GLaDOS in Portal, an intelligence core would appear which would start listing out instructions for making a cake, specifically the Black Forest cake that is shown at the end of Portal.
1 18.25 ounce packaged chocolate cake mix. 3/4 cup vegetable oil.
However, if the player holds the core long enough, they begin to list out
Slaughter electric needle injector, adjustable aluminum head positioner, injector needle gun, and it contains proven preservatives, deep penetration agents, and gas and odor control chemicals that will deodorize and preserve putrid tissue.
These tools and chemicals that the core mentions are a part of preserving a dead human body. Pretty eerie. Headcrab in the Portal 2 elevator shaft. There's been this image that has circulated in the Portal community. It appears to be a headcrab being sucked through an elevator shaft. Many people have debated on whether or not this is an actual occurrence. Some claim they have seen it, but they couldn't remember which chamber this occurred in, or if it's random. Most have said they haven't seen it. I couldn't get any footage of the headcrab getting sucked into any elevator shafts in any of my Portal 2 playthroughs. It seems like this image could be edited to spark some discussion among the community. More likely than not, this image is fake. Aperture invented lasers. In 1998, Aperture Science invented the thermal discouragement beam, which is basically a deadly laser. The beam is used in Portal 2 as a puzzle element and is noticeably absent in Portal. Some contextualize its absence in the first game as Chell not reaching the chambers that used it. Here's a little factoid. Lasers in real life were developed in the 1960s by Theodore H. Mayman in Hughes Research Laboratories. Everything is sentient. It can be argued that most, if not all, objects found in the test chambers have some form of consciousness. The personality cores, GLaDOS, the turrets, and other machines have consciousness through their AI. Wheatley even said that turrets can feel some kind of pain.
I shouldn't laugh, really. They do feel pain. Of a sort. It's all simulated, you know. But real enough for them, I suppose.
Why it was programmed in the first place is unknown. The radios could cry out in pain when you emancipate them. Companion cubes are implied to be sentient, with GLaDOS warning the player about it in Portal, and Ratman's interactions with it in Portal 2 Lab Rat. If there are bodies inside of them, it could be giving the cube more of a sentient presence. Or its presence is made by how players get attached to the cube, which spawns a sort of culture around it. GLaDOS continuously calls Chell a murderer in Portal 2, harping on the fact that Chell killed GLaDOS, the cores, and the turrets without hesitation. It's possible that this idea could be manufactured by GLaDOS' words to make the player feel more guilty. It could also be a psychological phenomenon, which is a great segue to every Aperture test was psychological. GLaDOS' chambers could not only be testing the portal gun, but the human mind as well. The intense loneliness one can experience in the test chambers fuels their desire to cope with it, tying back to the previous entry of sentientism. There are no employees or human administrators present in any of the games. There is nothing that is flesh and bones anywhere in Portal and Portal 2. The only evidence of their existence is writing on the walls or audio recordings from a bygone era. One of the prime examples of this psychological phenomenon would be the infatuation with the companion cube. It could be said that this cube allows test subjects to cope with their loneliness as they test with no one else around. It's also possible that GLaDOS made the cube, with its unique design and specific attention towards it, to taunt the player. Just a joke about how simple humans are, as they become so attached to an inanimate object. There are some that truly appreciated the cube as a tool, or even personified it like a stuffed animal. I don't believe that all the test chambers are psychological, though it must take a heavy toll on Chell's mental state from doing all these tests all the time all alone. Overall, I believe the companion cube is the best example of how these tests can be psychological though. Borealis boarding in Flash version. In the Flash version map pack, there's a section where the door fails, leading the player to find a hidden pathway behind a collapsible wall. They will leave the room through an air vent, catching a glimpse of the Borealis, docked inside of a facility. The player then enters a room that controls the crane, which loads a box of explosive mines onto the ship. Unfortunately, you don't get to explore the ship, and the player continues on to another test chamber afterwards. Walking turret. The walking turret was a variant of the turret that would follow the player throughout the test chamber. It would be able to fling itself through portals and chase the player. The ball post would also be its idle pose, which can be triggered by the player to deactivate it. This piece of concept art demonstrates its portal mechanic, as it shows the turret peering through a blue portal. The walking turret was first revealed during the Potato Fool's Day ARG in 2011, when the art previously mentioned was found. Valve animator Karen Pro elaborated that the walking turret didn't work as a game mechanic and was ultimately cut. Cave Johnson Companion Cube. The Cave Johnson Companion Cube was a removed scripted sequence from Portal 2 where Chell and GLaDOS would talk to Cave Johnson, who implanted his consciousness into a cube-like computer. The cut dialogue can be found in the game's scripts. When GLaDOS talks to Cave, it seems that Carolyn reawakens as she perks up to a system, terrifying GLaDOS. Cave asks the two to unplug his computer as he believes he has gone insane from being stuck in the cube for decades. He continues to talk to Chell, believing that she is apprehensive in unplugging him, despite GLaDOS saying otherwise. After the cube has powered down, Chell will climb upon it to escape the room. GLaDOS, seemingly traumatized from the experience, asks Chell to not speak about that encounter ever again. This section may be in the final game, although heavily shortened. It could be the section where GLaDOS briefly mirrors Carolyn's dialogue during one of Cave Johnson's recordings. She then gets really weirded out and realizes that she was Carolyn.
Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson. Why did I just... Who is that? What the hell is going on here?
Cores are scans of scientists. The personality cores found throughout the Enrichment Center could be the employees of Aperture Science. Cave Johnson was keen on retaining human consciousness in computers, so he could have had most of his employees copied onto the cores before GLaDOS killed everyone with her neurotoxin. However, there is not much that is discussed regarding this theory, but it makes sense that these cores could have been some portion of human consciousness. Vanilla Crazy Cake. This entry is about two things. First, it refers to the achievement Vanilla Crazy Cake, which is earned if the player completes all 6 advanced maps from Portal. Secondly, it refers to the beta boss fight in Portal. When GLaDOS, in her roller mind look, is nearly defeated, she would start glitching out, repeatedly saying Vanilla Crazy Cake.
Crazy cake, vanilla crazy cake, vanilla crazy cake, vanilla crazy cake.
The final game's achievement could be a reference to this cut boss fight. Third person in the portrait. In this portrait of Cave Johnson and Carolyn, there seems to be another person on the left side of the frame. On closer inspection, that person is actually a statue of Aeschylus, who is the author of Prometheus Bound, an ancient Greek tragedy that was published in 430 BC. This statue's presence correlates with the theme of GLaDOS being similar to Prometheus as mentioned earlier in the video. Aperture body count. Given the many deaths that Aperture had throughout its operation, there's no doubt that possibly hundreds of thousands of people have died in the facility, from forgotten test subjects in long-term relaxation for centuries, to the number of health violations that Aperture had because of their bankruptcy, to rogue AIs with a bitter hatred for humans. There are many ways that people could have died. No number of deaths have ever been recorded, but it's possible that it could be in the 100,000s to millions, given how large the facility is. Aperture and Combine partnership. There's some speculation on whether or not Aperture Science had worked with the Combine. Some of the tech that Aperture has is comparable to the Combine's. The Combine's energy balls are similar to Aperture's energy pellets. The Combine's force field wall could be a modified emancipation grid. Both of their turrets seem to fire the same ammunition, based on the muzzle flash. They also have the same behavior with both turrets, seemingly freaking out if thrown, spraying bullets everywhere before shutting down. This entry can give a possible answer to why the Combine hasn't breached the Enrichment Center. GLaDOS seems to allude to the fact that she had a role in keeping them away from the facility.
I have an infinite capacity for knowledge, and even I'm not sure what's going on outside. All I know is I'm the only thing standing between us and them. Well, I was.
She could have struck a deal with the Combine by giving them some Aperture tech so that they would leave Aperture alone. It's also possible that Aperture's technology is far superior to the Combine and to the rest of the world. Everyone wants to get the Borealis, an Aperture ship with an Aperture experiment that could be a powerful weapon. Aperture dug too deep. Apparently, Aperture got some kind of curse for digging too deep into that Michigan salt mine Cave Johnson bought out. The company had been through a lot, with Cave Johnson dying of moon dust poisoning, Aperture going to bankruptcy, going to court for the missing astronauts, GLaDOS killing everyone, Doug Ratman being stuck in the Enrichment Center. The list goes on. Other than that, there isn't much evidence to suggest that a curse even exists, and it could just be a coincidence. Cave Johnson is still alive. Some speculate that Cave Johnson could be alive, similar to the Cave Johnson Companion Cube entry. Johnson may have trapped his consciousness in some computer or machine that has yet to be discovered. where he survived his moon dust poisoning, scouring the shadows like Ratman. He could even leave behind some drawings on the wall for Chell to find. Again, there isn't much evidence to back up this claim. Space Corps has missing astronaut consciousness. It's speculated that the Space Corps could have the consciousness of the missing astronauts. In 1968, Cave Johnson had to attend court hearings regarding Aperture Science's involvement with the disappearance of astronauts, many of them not returning from testing. Aperture Science could have saved their consciousness into the personality core as a precaution before they went to testing. It seems that this core had become corrupt and was subsequently abandoned. This core went on to go insane from being forcibly robbed of their humanity and having to endure endless isolation. Its constant desire to go into outer space reflects the core's desire of having its freedom back, and hopefully those astronauts get some peace when they return to space. Okay, so it's pretty obvious that this is a joke entry. According to the creator, this entry was inspired by the Super Mario 64 Icebergs sequel cancelled due to temporal leakage. Portal Still Alive sequel. The entry implies that another expansion pack for Portal was in development but was cancelled soon after. I tried to find some evidence for this development and couldn't get much out of my research. Many say that no such sequel to Portal Still Alive was ever conceptualized. Chell clones. In the GLaDOS boss battle and Portal 2 lab rat, dialogue can be found suggesting that Aperture was able to clone test subjects, one of which could have been Chell.
I have your brain scanned and permanently backed up in case something terrible happens to you, which it's just about to.
However, in the Portal 2 co-op mode, GLaDOS stated that she needed humans for testing and had a vault filled with test subjects.
This final course is training to reach the human vault. So this actually has a purpose. Those other courses were fun, but let's be honest. I need human test subjects for it to be science.
So if she could have cloned humans, there would be no need for a human vault. Maybe this cloning machine was broken, or maybe GLaDOS deemed human cloning unethical. Whether Chell is a clone or not is still ambiguous. This clone idea was also in the Flash version map pack, where the player can stumble upon a lab filled with Chell clones, fueling the idea of GLaDOS having an infinite supply of test subjects. Censored Cave Johnson portrait in Portal. In the Ratman drawings found in Portal, portraits of Cave Johnson can be found with companion cube stickers covering his face. This is assuming that the man behind the companion cube is Cave Johnson and not some other employee. It's possible that this drawing was supposed to allude to Johnson's cut cube sequence for Portal 2. Wheatley Crab. During Karen Prell's guest lecture at 2012's Animex Festival at Teesside University, she showcased a cut animation of Wheatley transforming into a crab, much to the amusement of the audience.
Wheatley crab!
It's not known what purpose Wheatley's crab form would have been, but it could have been just a test animation for fun. The 20th Test Chamber. Portal only has 19 test chambers, which is an odd number to cap off a set. Usually people want to have a set that's on a number that ends with a 0 or a 5, but Portal decides 19 is the best. This missing 20th test chamber could be test chamber A12, the cut test chamber which had a cage filled with energy pellets bouncing around, and it may have been the missing test chamber in the set. However, test chamber 19 could actually be test chamber 20 because Portal starts the player out in test chamber 0 instead of test chamber 1, so maybe there isn't a missing chamber after all. Chell only slept for 9 years. There's been a lot of speculation and theories about how long Chell slept between Portal and Portal 2. After doing her physical exam and returning to bed, Chell wakes up with the announcer stating,
"Good morning. You have been in suspension for 9.
It's possible that the announcer glitched up and was supposed to say 9 years, but the facility looked absolutely destroyed. All of this damage could not have been possible in 9 years. Though some argue that the announcer hadn't glitched up and that the repeated 9s were intentional. The announcer's audio file has him repeating 9 a total of 55 times, and it's not known if it's days, weeks, months, or years. Besides the announcer voice line, the community looked at other Portal 2 assets to figure out how long Chell had been asleep. The turret packaging in-game has the production year printed as possibly 2010. People also note the amount of papers and wood that are still holding up, so it could not have been a long period of time. The 20-year gap seems to be accepted as canon because the events of Portal 2 would happen alongside or right after Half-Life 2 Episode 2. This is assuming Portal and Half-Life Alyx began at the same time. Although the community has various answers to the amount of time Chell has slept for, some Valve employees claim that Chell had been asleep for 60,000 years. Maybe Johnson vouched for high quality materials when building the Enrichment Center, which is why the facility has held up for so long. At any rate, whether Chell slept for 9 years or 9,000 years is left unknown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out the Twitch channel and Discord, links are in the description, and as always, thanks for watching.